What's going on, Yuzutubi? A Yubichubi? It's your boy Big Zay. Anyway, stupid. Um, got a little thing going on for y'all today. In the background is some Resident Evil gameplay. Resident Evil 2 Revelations or 3, I forget. But regardless, I'm not watching it. It's really just some throwaway footage that I have. I'm not gonna lie, it's not all that super exciting. It gets exciting at the end. And it's about 17 minutes long. I shouldn't be talking for 17 minutes. I mean, I could find a way to talk for 17 minutes. But anyway, but I'm just gonna let it play towards till the end, even if I'm done talking. For all my fans, who super fans who wanna watch to the end, Resident Evil fans. I do like Resident Evil. I've never been the biggest fan of the games though. I might have said this. I probably said this on another video that I used Resident Evil in. Just the gameplay, I'm not a fan, or the game mechanics. I'm not a big fan. But I love the movies though, even though I never saw the last one. I never finished the last one. But I remember I played Resident Evil 6 around when it came out. I think I got it on GameFly back when I was using GameFly back in the day at middle school. So I think I played that for like 5 seconds, or whatever. Anyway, so the other day or recently, whatever, I was listening to Ancient Faith Radio with Tom Soroka. I haven't like listened to a bunch of his episodes, but been going through his episodes. I went back to the beginning of 2020 and I was like, I'm just gonna. I mean, it'd probably take me years, just 250 of them, but I was like, I'm just gonna listen to all of them. And so I was watching one. I'm including some links in the description to the episode. But the second episode or third, I think it's second, was entitled "Is Technology Consumption Killing Us?" And I mean, you can imagine, what it says. You know, I mean, it's a good episode, but based off the title, as a Christians, I'm sure you can imagine what it's talking about. And it talks about fasting from technology. Don't touch your phone until you say your morning prayers, which I don't disagree with, of course. I've been trying to get better with that myself. Maybe do a little time on the prayer rope before I grab my phone and such. Especially having a YouTube channel. Not that it's super. There's a whole lot going on, but I want to check the analytics every morning, and so I have to watch myself with that. However, within the episode, one of the guys mentions a story written by Saint Augustine, and I'm not an Augustine expert. I barely know his like history. I know he wrote Confessions, City of God, which I have both of them, but I haven't read them. So yeah, I'm not an expert at all, and I'm not going to give a whole historical premise. But he mentioned a story about within Confessions about an individual who was obsessed with, or maybe not obsessed, but passionate about the gladiator games, right, from those times. And you've seen Gladiator. Are you not entertained? That kind of situation. Um, and that for him, it was like, so he was saying like his thing wasn't Snapchat, it wasn't Netflix, it was the Gladiator games. And how he mentions, and I'm going to go through the story, but he mentions how he would hear the roar of the crowd and it would just excite him. And I was like, that's interesting. I was like, I connect with that. For me, coming from the nightclub scene and loud music, jumping music, that's my gladiator games. I have to watch myself watching rap videos because, I'm like, oh, the club, and the idea of that and the kind of that lifestyle. I it's my gladiator games, and so I've been being out of that world for some years and getting deeper into my faith and especially the Orthodox Church, and allowing it to take over my life as a state of being, as a lifestyle, not just it's where we go to church on Sunday, but deeper than that. Clearing out whether it's triggers or images, so watching myself on social media to make sure I'm not checking out rappers profiles and the chains and the lights, camera action. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, I really connected with. Uh, I read the story, but just that statement, the quick summary that he gave, I connected with it, and then I went to read the story. And so I'm going to go through. I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'm going to go through it. And that's really it. That's really going to be the whole video. Um, yeah. So again, this is in St. Augustine's Confessions. It's book 6. It starts book 6, I guess chapter 7, and then it goes through 10. So it's 7, 8, 9, and 10. So like I said, I'm trying to go word for word, but I'm gonna go through it till you get the story. I don't. The context of words beginning, I don't exactly know, but it starts. This was a constant subject of gloomy talk among my circle of friends, but I used to discuss it, especially with Alypius and Nebridius. And I actually need to take my rubber bands out. I'm sorry that you had to see that. He was younger than I was and had been a student of mine both in our own town, which when I first began to teach, and later on at Carthage. He was greatly attached to me. I found out that he was fatally attracted by the games, and it caused me grave anxiety to think that he was likely to ruin a future which promised so well, if he had not already done so.
Come on, hurry.
Listen. It's not a lot of people's. I'm looking for a specific statement. I had forgotten that I might use my influence with him to prevent him from wasting his talents in this thoughtless, impetuous enthusiasm for futile pastimes. There's also the writing of this. I don't know if the whole book is like this, but at least this section, it's kind of like a prayer. But you, O Lord, who hold the reins of all you have created, had not forgotten this man who was one day to be a bishop and administer your sacrament to your children. I'm not sure if I guess I could have Googled it beforehand, but I'm not sure if it means he was partaking in the games or just a watcher. But anyway, it occurred to me that the passage which I happened to be reading could very well be explained by an illustration taken from the games in the arena. He was not thinking of Alypius, but it basically convicted him. He took my words to heart. This conscientious young man saw in it cause for anger with himself and warmer affection for me. Long ago, you caused these words of yours to be inserted in your book, and it quotes Proverbs 9 and 8. The wise are grateful for a remonstrance. I don't know what that means. Well, I pulled up what that meant, and it's a forcefully reproachful protest.
This must be the way out. Then we need to find a way through.
Earnest presentation of reasons for opposition or grievance, or a document that formally states such objections. In Proverbs 9 and 8, and another, do not correct a scoffer or he will hate you. Correct a wise man and he will love you. So, the wise are grateful. I had not meant to rebuke him, but you use us all, whether we know it or not. By great effort of self-control. For after he had heard my words, Alypius hastened to drag himself out of the deep pitfall into which, dazzled by the allure of pleasure, he had plunged of his own accord. By a great effort of self-control, he shook himself free of all the dirt of the arena and never went near it again. Then he managed to overcome his father's reluctance to allow him to become a pupil of mine. He went to Rome ahead of me to study law, and there, strange to relate, he became obsessed with an extraordinary craving for gladiatorial shows. At first he detested these displays and refused to attend them, but one day during the season for this cruel and bloodthirsty sport, he happened to meet some friends and fellow students returning from their dinner. In a friendly way, they brushed aside his resistance and his stubborn protests and carried him off to the arena. See how the enemy works. In a friendly way, they brushed aside his resistance. You may drag me there bodily, he protested, but do you imagine that you can make me watch the show and give my mind to it? I shall be there, but it will be just as if I were not present, and I shall prove myself stronger than you or the games. Um, they found seats as best they could, and Alypius shut his eyes tightly. If only he had closed his ears as well, for an incident in the fight drew a great roar from the crowd, and this thrilled him so deeply that he could not contain his curiosity. He was confident that if he saw what caused the uproar, he would find it repulsive and remain master of himself. So he opened his eyes, and his soul was stabbed with a wound more deadly than any which the gladiator, whom he was so anxious to see, had received in his body. He fell, and fell more pitifully than the man whose fall had drawn that roar of excitement from the crowd. The din had pierced his ears and forced him to open his eyes, laying his soul open to receive the wound which struck it down. This was presumption, not courage. The weakness of his soul was in relying upon itself instead of trusting in you, talking to God. When he saw the blood, it was as though he had drunk a deep draught of savage passion. Instead of turning away, he fixed his eyes upon the scene and drank in all its frenzy, unaware of what he was doing. He reveled in the wickedness of the fighting and was drunk with the fascination of bloodshed. He was no longer the man who had come to the arena, but simply one of the crowd which he had joined, a fit companion for the friends who had brought him. Need I say more? He watched and cheered and grew hot with excitement, and when he left the arena, he carried away with him a diseased mind which would leave him no peace until he came back again, no longer simply together with the friends who had first dragged him there, but at their head, leading new sheep to the slaughter. Yet you stretched out your almighty, ever merciful hand, O God, and rescued him from this madness. You taught him to trust in you, not in himself. But this was much later. Um, so we can see at least, I mean, there's a little bit more, but Christ said, an unclean spirit leaves a man and goes into dry places looking for a place to dwell, finds none, and goes back to the home he came from. I think it says came to his home and finds it swept and clean, and brings in seven more spirits worse than himself, and a man is in a worse state than he was before. And that's I connected that to this, or this to that especially when he said leading new sheep to the slaughter. He was basically worse than he was before, when he had gave up the games that it mentions earlier in the story. Alrighty. Oh, yeah. And then the next chapter, next section. And there was another event in his life too, which you, my God, must surely have allowed to happen only because you knew that he was to be a great man in later life. And you wanted him to start in good time to learn that in judging cases, one man must not too easily condemn another through being over credulous. I look that up, and it's like easily convinced. And I put quick zeal. Like people become Christians, and I become like Christian police. While he was still studying under me at Carthage, you allowed him to be arrested as a thief by the market officers. Um, so basically, it's framed. It basically gives a story, but I don't need to read it all. He gets framed, essentially. Or he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's a better way to put it. But this was the end of his lesson. You, O Lord, were the only witness of his innocence, and at once you stood by his side to defend him. And like the scriptures say, God is for us, who can be against us? God says, vengeance is mine. Before they call, I will answer, type of thing. Let's get to these crimes. Whom he frequently recognized about once, take what he They passed by the house of the youth who had committed the crime. Yeah. And Alypius, who was destined later to preach your word and judge many cases in your church, went home all the wiser for this experience. And back to Proverbs 9 and 8. I found him in Rome when I arrived. He became very closely attached to me, came with me to Milan. He had already acted 3 times as assessor with an integrity that was a source of wonder to his colleagues, though to him It was astonishing that anyone should prefer wealth before honesty. Amen. But it was not only by inducements of bribery that his character was put to the test, he was also subjected to intimidation. A bribe was offered. A little bit of story on temptation, which is. Then it quotes, so it's a little bit more, but then it quotes, he who is trustworthy over a little sum is trustworthy over a greater. Luke 16:10-12. The words of Christ, the voice of your truth, can never be unmeaning. That's like a whole video on itself, right? His distress was not less than mine. Alright, that's essentially the end of that. I mean, there's definitely more words, so I encourage you to read the story and check it out. But yeah, I mean, you read this, you get the story. I don't really need to elaborate too much more. So I hope you'll check it out. Hope you'll come back and see me. Stay blessed. And Jesus, Jesus and his church, the Orthodox Church.
You think it might have snagged on something on the way down? Claire, I see the key. It's out of reach. Let me try shooting it down. Run, Moira! Run!